Time for another history brief. So today we're going to talk about the Civil War medicine and how that has led to some IU scientific research that's going on today, and how there's kind of a direct line, although not maybe in the way that you would think, between those two things. So the connection here is a guy named Dr. Luther Dana Waterman. So Waterman was born in Wheeling, Virginia. It wasn't yet West Virginia, in 1830. And then he went to the Medical College of Ohio in Cincinnati, where he graduated in 1853. And then he moved to Kokomo, Indiana, where he opened a medical practice before the Civil War. And then when the Civil War broke out, he signed up as a surgeon. So first he served with the 8th Indiana Cavalry and then with the 39th Indiana Infantry. But he was a good enough surgeon and medical doctor that he actually rose to the point of being the medical director of the II Corps in the Army of the Cumberland. So he was about as high up as a Corps medical director. That's about as high up as you could get during the Civil War in the medical field. And in January of 1863, right after the Battle of Nashville, there was still some fights and some skirmishes and things that were going on. Waterman was overseeing the evacuation of the wounded out of Nashville, and that was largely done through riverboats, similar to the one that you see in the picture here. And those riverboats would take the Cumberland River and evacuate people north into Kentucky and back up to the Ohio River. And Waterman actually took 3 boats loaded with medical evacuees out of Nashville. And along the way, they actually got captured by a Confederate unit. The 3 hospital ships got captured. And he told them they're hospital ships, and they got inspected, they got looked at and everything else. But the Confederates deemed them as having contraband on board and other war supplies and materials. And it's not real clear what that contraband was that was involved there. It may have been cotton. It could have also been slaves that had been freed and brought north. But either way, they determined that they were going to destroy the ships, which meant that all of the wounded men on board would basically be stranded along the side of the river, wherever it was that they were at. And Waterman actually talked the Confederates into letting him keep 1 ship, the Hastings, and he managed to fit all 400 wounded men onto that 1 ship and was able to get them down to the next port after that. He was later captured during the war and served as a medical director and a surgeon at a POW camp for several months before finally the war ended and he was released and came back to Indianapolis. When he returned to Indianapolis, Waterman helped organize the Indiana Medical College and the Indiana State Board of Health. And so those were 2 of the projects that he worked on. Now, the Indiana Medical College eventually in 1908 became the Indiana University School of Medicine. And at the point when that happened, he had already retired. He retired in 1893. But he was still a faculty member emeritus or a professor emeritus. And so we gave him status as a professor emeritus at Indiana University when we took over the medical college. So he was still involved and engaged with things that were going on. He was still really involved in medical issues and medical activities in the Indianapolis area and public health issues. He also found time in retirement to write a book of poetry. It's in the library. I've read it. You can check it out if you want. But anyway, when he became a professor emeritus, he got very involved in IU and IU medical related pieces of it as well. I found no records anywhere that Waterman ever got married or had any children. And so this kind of makes sense then that he had, over time, as this well-known doctor and medical figure in Indiana, he had amassed a fair amount of property and money and other things. And so in 1915, he gave $100,000 to Indiana University to establish a scientific research fund. At first they were going to call it a Waterman Institute, but this was the largest gift for scientific research that had ever been given to IU at that point. And $100,000 was a lot of money back in 1915. And this gift consisted of some property that he owned and some other things. And then he passed away shortly after that in 1918. And so his legacy kind of lived on. And I thought, well, that's interesting because I don't think I've ever heard this name before. When I first found out about him, started researching him, I thought, I've never heard of Waterman in connection with IU. Maybe this is something that's really just School of Medicine related. and I've never heard of it just because it's mostly been there. So I did a little bit of searching and Googling. And to my surprise, I found out that yes, we do still have a named professorship, and we have since 1917, the Luther Dana Waterman Professor, which comes with research project funding and other recognition work around the university. And it just so happens that one of the current Luther Dana Waterman Professor is also my neighbor, and I had no idea. And I had just talked to him earlier that day, and now here I am doing research that connected back to him. So it was kind of an interesting moment when I discovered that and tied those two together. So there's a quick overview of how Civil War medicine ties to research that we're doing today through the life of Dr. Luther Dana Waterman and the work that he did and his connections here at the university. If you want to know more about university history or more about the names that are on our buildings and our professorships and that our neighbors may be involved with, then you need to subscribe to the channel. And I'm going to put a subscribe button on here somewhere so that you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also go back and watch past videos, and we'll keep coming out with videos every week through the rest of the bicentennial. So be sure to follow us and follow along.